What is up, everybody? Welcome to another video, and today I have another collaboration. If you're no stranger to my Instagram, you already know who I have on for a helper of sorts. Of course, it is my boy.
I'm gonna punch it.
We've
I'm gonna
met
punch
for
it.
a while now, and we've been mulling over this idea for a number of weeks now. So I'm gonna head off the first part, and then he will give his little scenarios. Now let's get into the video. So right off rip, I wanted to plan for an idea of a Planet Vegeta prequel. The story will have taken place during the beginning of the Vegeta the Third's rule of Planet Vegeta. Of course, it will be focused on Bardock. He will be the primary focus of the story and the primary protagonist of the story, basically giving us a day in the life of the Saiyans long before you know what. Now, other than that, let us begin with the next part of this little exchange. So, in typical fashion, the next one I wanted to go over is the Saiyan Tuffle War, if these Tuffles were included into the Dragon Ball canon, that is. Now, let's get into it, as we should do. Now, of course, the Saiyan Tuffle War, this story would have taken place at the height of the war between the races, long before the Cold Force found the Saiyans. I think that would be a very interesting time period in the Dragon Ball canon and the Dragon Ball lore to tell an interesting story in a more gritty and almost quote-unquote realistic take as far as, the grittiness of it all, because there will be no Dragon Balls wishing cohorts back to life. Once death in this scenario happens, it's solid, of course. Now, we already know certain characters have to survive to a certain point, but you get the picture. Now let's move on to the next one. Now this one I am actually a little bit more hype for, if this was to ever happen. The first legendary Super Saiyan. 1,000 years before the beginning of the Dragon Ball story, that is when this one will take place. Now it can star any random Saiyan. It could even be Broly's bloodline in particular, just to add some, extra meat to the story. But overall, it could be any random Saiyan. It happened 1,000 years ago, so we can really go crazy with this one. And it could happen on planet Sadala, which is where I would more than likely want this to pursue and want this to happen in. Now, of course, this story would be a lot more near and dear to my heart, and I feel like a lot of more Dragon Ball fans would enjoy this story a bit more because we get to know more about Saiyans, and maybe in the process, know a little bit more about the history between the Nameks and the Saiyans, i.e. the Namekian Book of Legends. But that is here or there. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? Now, this one could actually take place in modern day, and it actually does take place in modern day, or at least parts of it. Let me explain. This one is the Bardock, This one is the Bojack Saga. The story will follow the beginning of the reimagined Bojack crew being introduced into the Dragon Ball canon, and it will explain how and why we never see hide or hair of them in any way, shape, or form in the modern Dragon Ball lore or canon, besides them being, well, non-canon. One day, a hole between heaven and hell is ripped open, and of course, King Kai is letting them know. And of course, their past gets explained through exposition, or whatever have you. Maybe through Whis, maybe through Beerus, and of course, it's going to happen through King Kai, because we need King Kai to have something to do. Now, this one actually takes place in Universe 6, and the story is A Hitman's Day. A hit story. I know y'all like how I did that. Now, let's begin. So, the story takes place after the Tournament of Power, and we follow a day in the life of Hit. It would be a more darker and grimier and grittier story than what we're used to in the typical Dragon Ball tale. And we'll get to see what makes this Universe 6 assassin so feared and renowned throughout Universe 6. And I actually want to do the story too, because I honestly think it'll be a very interesting thing, because we never really get to go in depth with Hit or Jiren or any of the other characters in Universe 6 aside from Kaba, and even with Kaba we get very little. So that's just my little idea for a couple stories in the Dragon Ball canon that could happen. We got some prequels, we got some sequels. But like I said, my favorite is obviously either the Saiyan Tuffle War or, of course, the first legendary Super Saiyan. Do whatever you want with that one, and I'm going to pass it over to my buddy Isaac for his portion of the video. This is going to be great. You guys enjoy it. I'll check with y'all in the end of the video. Other than that, Peace.
These are my top 5 Dragon Ball spin-off stories that I would like to see that I think have some, story weight and my ideas for them. Starting off, I'd have a Beerus and Champa story. I just want to see their origin, how did these two siblings become the gods of destruction for 2 different universes? I think that everyone wants to see that. I put that one first just because that one was, pretty obvious. So, yeah, Beerus and Champa would be first just because I didn't really have a lot of ideas there. That's just something that I really want to see. Next would be a future Trunks story. It takes place after the events of the Goku Black arc, and here Trunks understands that he needs to become stronger. Every single time he's had this major issue, he's had to basically run to the main timeline for help. Having experienced Zeno's power and seeing his own timeline wiped out, that kind of builds that intensity within him. And he starts to understand exactly how large the power gap in the universe really is. And now, with a baby on the way, he's going to do anything necessary to close that gap. He becomes obsessed with the pursuit of power. We see him let out his inner Vegeta a little bit, and I think that would just be an interesting place to take the character. Obviously, he wouldn't say that, he's Trunks, he's his own character, but I think that having him faced with his genuine, mortality and him having a child, I think that would kind of change his perspective a little bit. That'd make him a lot more ruthless. In this story, we would see him establish a new generation of Z-Fighters to protect the Earth. Up next would be a Goten and Trunks story. I want to separate them from the other Z-Fighters and send them on their separate journey. They're basically going to get stuck in the multiverse. Think kind of like GT, how it was a space adventure. This is going to be a multiverse adventure. Their goal is to find their way back to Universe 7. I think this is going to be a great way to make them both into 3-dimensional characters, because up until this point, we really haven't gotten a lot. Yeah, just based on what we've gotten so far, they're very bland. We haven't really seen them characterized in any way other than how they were as children. They're just kind of older children now. But I think that this would really be a coming-of-age story for the both of them. I'd love to see them both grow in power and diversify their arsenal. I think that Dragon Ball gets kind of boring. One of my favorite things about the Gas arc, was that Gas was using these energy constructs, and I would love to see different kinds of powers. I think it'd be super interesting for Goten and Trunks to learn something different out there in the multiverse that they could add to their wheel of moves. By the time they get back, they're going to be a lot more mature. Trunks is going to be more so future Trunks. And Goten is going to be a smarter, more serious Goku. He's going to be kind of like Gohan, except he actually enjoys battle. I think that that's the best way to also set up a passing of the torch. At this point, I think that it's too late for Gohan to become the main character as everybody wanted him to be during the Buu Saga. Also, on this journey, I want Trunks to find a sword out there. I don't give a he does it. Give him a sword. Up next is what I call the Demon's Realm. Focuses on King Kai and a couple other surprise characters. The story starts off with King Yemma closing the doors to the realm of the afterlife, which means that both heaven and hell have been cut off from the rest of the universe. He knows that something awful has happened in hell, as the walls between the realms are beginning to crumble. So he enlists King Kai's help and orders him to create a team of fallen warriors to sneak into hell and investigate. This investigation would lead to the discovery of an organized uprising led by the new Demon King. His goal is to restore Hell's most powerful weapon, Janemba. Use him and his army of restored warriors to free himself from Hell and take over the universe. When it comes to the team that King Kai uses, I was looking for characters that are dead that would make sense in the context of this story. So far, the team is comprised of Bardock, Pikkon, and Grandpa Gohan. They would take this team into Hell, and here we would meet maybe a couple more. They would help out the heroes in taking down this new Demon King and stopping the rise of Janemba. Our final story centers around Yamoshi, the Super Saiyan God. We know little to nothing about him. The story starts off 1,000 years before the current series with a meeting in heaven. All 18 universes' representatives are present, the gods of destructions, the angels, and the supreme Kais. Here, Zeno reveals a list that ranks all 18, and explains that he intends to wipe out the bottom 6. Universe 7 ranks at round 16. He says thank you for your service and raises his hand to snap the universes away. But right before he does, Universe 7's god of destruction, Zalama, challenges Zeno to a game. See, Zalama believes that in a single year, he can raise his universe's rank to the top 5. Zeno loves the idea, and the Grand Priest does too, but he insists on one rule: no direct interference. Now, you may be asking yourself, why is Universe 7 in such an awful state? Well, that of course is the fault of the Saiyan Empire. They control the entire universe. They're ruthless monsters, too powerful for even the Kai to control. The only hope in the universe was a growing rebellion spearheaded by the Yard Rats, the Tuffles, the Namekians, and a group of 20 Saiyan defectors, including a very important young man that will play into the story later down the line. All led by the lion-hearted Yamoshe. In this story, the Saiyans are ridiculously powerful. The king of the Saiyans is a Super Saiyan 4, and most of his warriors have access to 1 through 3. It's the Saiyans' brutal, barbaric rule that has ruined this universe. So God of Destruction Zalama and young Whis, a young Supreme Kai, decide that their best bet is to provide aid to the rebellion and put their trust into Yamoshe. So for those of you that may think that this is far-fetched, understand that I did rate this with Dragon Ball Z in mind. You know, like, this is all leading to what we see in Dragon Ball Z. I know that it sounds ridiculous, but by the end of this story, the Saiyans will find themselves at the beck and call to Frieza. They're going to find themselves in that position. It's because of the events that happen here. We see sacrifices that are made. We see gods born, legends die, and all the above. I think that it's really interesting, and just have an open mind, okay? Remember that this is a what if. Relax, take a breather. I just think that this would be great. And also remember that this takes place before Zalama creates the Super Dragon Balls. He has his own story down the line that I'm working on as well. But yeah, I hope that you guys found joy in those, and if you have any ideas, any kind of suggestions, especially for that the Demon Realm, like the team that would be assembled, just comment it down below. I'd love to hear your ideas.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this little collaboration video. I enjoyed putting it together. I enjoyed collecting the, well, necessary Avengers, so to speak, for this one. Can't wait who's going to be the next collab. Find out next time in Dragon Ball Z. See what I did there? Okay, I'm going to head out now. I'm going to leave.